Today, 25 and 26, we are deployed to every geographic command globally. We're supporting JADA4 along the southern border. We're protecting the nation's capital.
For anyone who doesn't know you or Hidden Level.
Absolutely. So again, my name is Brad Garber. I'm currently the Chief Operating Officer at Hidden Level Incorporated. From a background perspective on the company was founded in 2018. We literally just had our 8th birthday last week. Jeff Cole is our founder and CEO and really the visionary of the company. For me and my background, I was a career senior naval officer, Navy pilot by trade. Towards the end of my career, I ran strategy for Chairman Joint Chiefs. Also served as the assistant director of the budget office for the Navy, FMB. Also served as the deputy director of FMBE, which is the appropriations liaison office for the Navy and Marine Corps. After retirement, I went to a very large defense prime. I was a VP report to the defense business CEO. That company did about $85 billion in revenue last year. So I've seen how the bigs operate. In 2020, I was asked to come back to public service as the principal civilian advisor to the vice chief of the Navy. And this is where I really began to dig into how do we get things quicker into the service in a way that is sustainable and scalable, and really leveraging private sector markets, which is the kind of the defense and innovation ecosystem that exists today. So when I pivoted back out of public service back into the private sector in February 2023, I wanted to join a startup or new entrant. That is how I ended up at Hidden Level as the chief operating officer.
Not the traditional startup guy.
No, and it's a perspective because you and I go back quite a ways, and when you look at these triangles that you deal with all the time is the acquisition world, the voice of customer on the battlefield, and then Congress is how do you have that healthy relationship? And what I see often, especially in this new entrant or defense ecosystem, is now there's a fourth corner, which is the private markets and private capital. And what happens a lot of times is those groups get together. They think they're talking about the same thing. They get excited. They leave. Everybody thinks they have a win. And then they get frustrated when there's not execution. And that's why I'm just super excited to talk about the APFIT program today, because to me, this is one of those shining North Stars of where all four corners of that square can come together and align on something that's really important and actually making a difference inside the Department of War.
Yeah, 100%. So coming out of your military background, you obviously, in your MLS, when you were operational, dealt with a lot of technology, then went up, you saw the budget side, which is unique, right? I think we share that experience in lots of operational time, but then at the latter end of your career, you get to actually see how the machine works, and it kind of opens your eyes. And you remember being, a lieutenant or a sergeant being pissed off about why you don't have the things that you think you should have. And then you start seeing how the machine works, and then it makes a lot more sense. So then when you get to Hidden Level, right, did all the horror stories that you heard out on the street of being a small business, was that real, or was it maybe something else, maybe just a little education that needed to happen? How hard was it to go from big business and Pentagon then into a startup?
It's phenomenally difficult. Every day there is friction in the system. I joined right as Series A closed, so fairly early on in the company. It had been in existence for a few years, but still early stage, if you will. And what I saw early on is what most companies deal with, and I'll get to why APFIT is the real benefit here, is when you're in this environment where, and Deputy Feinberg and others have really advocated recently for going to the private market to raise capital, develop your own IP, deliver on time and on quality and on cost. Those things are super, super hard to do, especially for a startup. If you are having trouble either going to the private market to raise capital or just trying to break in with a customer. And so what the APFIT framework provided us as a company, and we'll get more into the specifics here, is it became a rally point where, one, it was a signal to the private market when we were awarded in June of or May of 23 in class 2, that one, we're starting to get some traction. We're being recognized as being important. And actually it helped trigger the close of our Series B and our preempting of our Series C investment in the company. That's part one. Part two is it is the going back to the horror stories of the valley of death of getting something from a TR level of 5 or 6 over to the 7 to 9 period. What we were able to do, and when you look at kind of how we stepped through, and if it's okay, I'll go through kind of the timeline of what led up to the APFIT and then how the APFIT triggered the success.
Yeah, no, I think that, starting there is probably the best because, anybody watching this now, right? So you were class 2 very early on. The program's matured quite a bit, but I think there's still a lot of companies out there that are looking at the program. They think they're ready, and they may be in that same spot where they're like, do I engage here? Do I not engage here? So how did you kick off, or where were you before APFIT, and then what was your entry point into the program?
To remind everybody again, we were part of class 2, which awarded in May of 23. The company started in 2018. Really, our first foray into Department of War was in November 21 when the feasibility study was awarded to us to begin to look at our technology and could it be used for a counter-UAS capability to provide a passive counter-UAS capability for the force. So that kicked things off in September 22. We really started prototype development. Again, up to this point, we're self-funding all of this, some minor dollars coming in from the department, but nothing super huge. And then we took our prototype to a significant test in the March-April timeframe of 2023. At that test, we proved the technology is real. It is working. What it does is it provides a passive bubble over the maneuver force so they can stay hidden but still protect the maneuver force from drones, which is pretty darn relevant today, using two capabilities. One is passive direction finding, but what makes us super unique is passive multistatic radar, which is the ability to run a radar equation with using emitters that are either brought to the battlefield with us or emitters that are just in the environment to use that energy to track things that are airborne. Super.
Right. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but while we're on this, let's make some worlds collide here, right? You were awarded in 23. Right. February 2022, the war in Ukraine kicks off.
Yes.
How much do you think that your emerging mission alignment, right? When we talk, old school, when we had JASIDs, you had your JUONs, your joint urgent operational need statements, the things that are coming from the field. Do you feel like that was or the driver in where you were at as a company as far as engaging with a program that is as competitive as APFIT?
So I think there's a couple of things here. One is absolutely when the war kicked off, people started to set up across the whole defense industry, and especially inside the Department of War, because the lessons learned were coming out pretty quickly from Ukraine. The real threat, asymmetric approach, probably not quite, some may or may not consider this fourth offset, but the bottom line is it changed the character of how we were fighting war for sure. So the timing was serendipitous, if you will. But the tech still has to work, right? And there's a lot of things out there, especially we do a lot more than counter UAS, but if we're talking counter UAS or counter drone here, the reality is that the market is flooded with a lot of technology right now. And what we're super proud of is even in the past, 11 months, we've done 8 major tests inside of the Department of War and have consistently come out as a top tech at those the test events. Point being here is you continue to have to earn it every day. That's something that everybody who's considering applying for an APFIT is APFIT is the accelerant. And what it did for us is, if I go through the rest of the timeline here, is so we talked about the prototype in 22. We went to this test in March and April of 23. By the time we got through this test, the systems were soldier operated. So we were already getting to a pretty high TRL level of maturity of the technology. Then we get the award in May of 23 of APFIT. We go back to a test in August of 23 with the Army. We're successful there to the point where the 4-star at Futures Command issued a directed requirement to accelerate the program to a program of record. The Army then said, hey, we want one more validation test. December of 23, we went to that test. And coming out of that, the Chief of Staff of the Army issued his own directed requirement. So as far as we know, at least for recent programs, it's super rare to have someone win an outfit, so validation from Department of War leadership of under USWR&E, but at the same time, too, have 2 4-stars validate the technology. So what that did is it accelerated the program to be made a program of record in January of 24. We should note that is not normal to go that fast, but we were on an urgent acquisitions path where they had to field the technology in 18 to 24 months. And then later in 24, the systems went to combat in the October 24 timeframe, and went through combat eval with U.S. Special Forces from the 24 and 25 timeframe. So I want to highlight this. APFIT is for end use items. So you have to have a level of maturity in your tech, at least through the arc of getting the award, that you can deliver an end product that can be used. This allowed us to deliver that end product. But one of the things we're super proud of is in stride, the customer said, we like your prototypes so much that we want them, but we also could do this, and this. So there were additional requirements levied by the department. People need to be eyes wide open, is that you're not just done. You're never done fully maturing your product, because you're going to continue to give what the warfighter what they want. So what we're super proud of is we got the APFIT, and then after that August 23 test, the Army said, hey, we love this, but could you make it a little smaller, and could you add these additional features? So we spun a whole new sensor for them. And within 18 months of the first conversation, we delivered the LRIP items to the Army, and those are deploying globally now.
So let's take a pause there, right? So I don't know why anybody listens to me ramble for a couple hours every week. And I do get like way down in the weeds, super budget nerdy on this. So let's pull back for 2 seconds, because I know I can have this conversation with you. And unless we've gotten Eric Lofgren or Bonnie Evangelista in here, it's kind of hard to have this, right? So you mentioned the urgent acquisition pathway on the adaptive acquisition framework, right? So
Yes. Now
now your folks that are looking at acquiring this are already putting 12 to 18 month timelines on delivery for you, right? So that's
Absolutely.
item number one. So as people are thinking about getting involved in APFIT, it's like, are you ready to deliver not an initial article, not a prototype, but you're talking about, could you be in the field in combat today, whether it's going to CENTCOM, EUCOM, INDOPACOM, can we give it to a warfighter today to use if the balloon goes up? So that's one. Then two, as you had mentioned, and I think this gets lost in translation a lot, when Devin comes here to Frontier House or he does his industry engagements, we try to parse this out. So the DoD 7000, the financial management regulation, right? Super nerdy, that defines procurement dollars, right? Is the driver of APFIT. And that's why it's different than, say, a rapid prototyping program, or maybe a prototype OTA that you're getting out of DIU. It's different in the sense that it's legally defined as procurement dollars, PROC, which makes it that low rate initial production account to actually get you out of RDT&E dollars and into procurement dollars, where you can get that long-term recurring revenue, those long-term contracts. But once the user, the warfighter, the PAE, PEO, PM, CPE, whoever signed the check there, well, USWR&E signs the check, but the receiver, when they come back to you inside your APFIT dollars and say, hey, we want a V2 delivered, we want a V3 delivered, what can you do this? And you're managing your IRAD in the company, you're maybe even running 1, 2, who knows how many other RDT&E accounts on development for V2, V3, you're delivering that during the period of performance for AppFit, right? You're just listening to the users and adjusting to what they need. It's not, oh, AppFit bought widget one and you delivered widget one for the 3-year period of performance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great point to make. And I want to bring a couple things up here. One is there, just because you win an AppFit award don't think there's still not friction in the system. And the friction can come in many different ways. One is when you look back for a second, what was happening in, 24 and 25, very long continuing resolutions, CRs allow you, require you to use the last year's budget profile. So if there were any divots in the funding profile for your program, you're going to have those in there. This is the so what of the timing of our award is because of the CR in 24, there was a pretty significant divot in the program. That $10 million check filled in that divot. So the program was able to kind of stay on track. And that's what allowed us to field to a program of record. The program was supposed to transition in 26 to a program of record. We transitioned in 24. That's the so what with the injection of the money. So you can't get away from that. The other piece though is that, and you'll hammer this home, is for the folks who are watching this who want to go after an AppFit, it is in-use items, which means mature technology that can be delivered is what you have to deliver to this program. So along with developing the tech and that cut over to manufacturing, you're going to have the team come up and look at your manufacturing facilities. The Army coming up and looking at our floor and saying, we're proud now, is when we started with AppFit, we had one facility. We're now getting ready to open up our 5th facility. We're 3 times bigger in our head count. None of that would have happened without this accelerant because it allowed us to go to the private market and get additional capital to scale. That's one piece. But the other piece is it's really, really important for that team to come in from whoever is the awarding service of the AppFit and say, okay, this team is not just good at cooking tech. They can actually build it and deliver it. Now, that's part of when you look at the roots of the company, our head of manufacturing, as well as our dev and manufacturing team, scaled a couple of big programs inside of the Department of War previously at another company, a system called Crew, which is a counter IED system, which I'm sure you used during World War on Terror.
Yup.
So bottom line is for the companies who are going after an AppFit, you have to think holistically because the whole organization has to have the capabilities, systems, and process to scale and to deliver an end-use item that potentially may go to combat the next day after you deliver it.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's where I think in the creation of the program and in the original legislation, that was always the goal. Change the conversation from what's your TRL to let's start giving people opportunities and companies opportunities to start building out that low rate initial production, that MRL. And if you need to expand the company or invest in manufacturing, those proc dollars allow you to do that in a way that previous RDT&E dollars would have never let you do. And it really is about growing the company post-award.
Yeah. And one other thing it allowed us to do, and this is significant and it's benefiting the department now, is when we got that award, we were able to not just target the purchase of raw materials for those initial LRIP items. We were able to buy a tranche more because we knew demand was coming. And what that allowed us to do is really shrink the timeline of delivery. So to date, we have delivered every sensor to the Department of War to multiple customers, not just the Army, early. And that's huge.
So let's get into that, right? I mean, because that's, there's a lot of great things about this program, but really it's, as I look at projects, and I would assume, the Hill looks at them the same way, very excited about the direction that DIU is going, right? I think, that organization under Owen West has tons of opportunity. Owen, has a lifetime of experience that makes him perfect for that job right now. But one of the pieces there that I would like to see him bring back that we haven't seen in a while was under Mike Brown and Mike Madsen, DIU used to put out a great transition report. And they always used to tout their transition numbers. How much have they transitioned? And, when they were doing their awards, 20% of what they touched transitioned somewhere to another service or another partner to SOCOM. I don't know what those numbers are today. And obviously there's a restructure, but I think when the APFIT program office looks at what is that metric, what's quantifiably impactful about the project that they picked for APFIT, wasn't that initial buyer or user raise their hand and say, hey, I want 10, 20, 30 million for this. It was, one, did they continue buying in the out years? But then where did more programs of record, potentially with other services, other customers, other agencies, grow out of that because you had bought down all that tech debt? You're already in proc. Anybody else who wants to get on board with you it's so much easier for them because it's no longer a 1 in 10, hey, startup-y prototype thing. This is now a real product. How did the company grow after the APFIT?
Yeah, and I want to touch on one thing with the partnership with the government that I think the folks who are going to pursue APFIT should really consider. Our partner was DevCom C5ISR, and I won't say their last names, but Blake was the first PM and then Brandon after him. Absolute great partners in the government. I think sometimes folks entering this market almost see the government or the PM as the boogeyman. They're not. If you create the right relationships, there's your partners and they are your enablers. And one of the things that DevCom C5ISR was willing to do is we set up our contract with progress payments. So we got a big chunk up front. That became working capital. And then we had to hit milestones until we delivered the first articles. Weren't able to count those articles as revenue until we actually put the sensors in the hands of the government. But that created a pocket of working capital that we were able to go buy additional long lead parts towards additional sensors beyond just the delivery to LRIP. But it also allowed us to invest in the infrastructure to actually have additional advanced manufacturing capabilities. For example, it was in the news not that long ago, we opened up our 4th facility with some advanced test chambers and whatnot. That money from APFIT plus private sector capital in the form of venture dollars allowed us to accelerate that additional ramp to deliver to other folks. And what happened is through that, all the testing we did with Army, then we went to DIU low-cost sensing, won best RF sensor technology at Falcon Peak in 25, OSWR&E TRX 25.2. We went there and won that as a top performer. Recent tests with JTF NCR, 6 tests, we consistently come out as a top performer there. I say all this to say the acceleration and notoriety that APFIT gave us momentum. It gave us momentum to have the dollars to get across that 24 CR to bridge into a program of record 2 years early. It also elevated our profile in the venture community to be able to track the Series B and then preempted Series C. And it's still a feather in our cap to say we were cohort 2 in APFIT, and we've been able to use that as additional momentum.
I think to me, that's the biggest measure that R&E should be looking at is not only did the initial buyer continue, but who else got on board after and who started, even if it's back into RDT&E dollars, who's asking for more, because there's 2 core principles of this program at the end of the day. It's service urgent warfighter needs and do it with companies that we're gonna lose or we're gonna miss out on great opportunities because they're a small business and they're caught in this stupid valley of death thing. And how do we get the company through? So company impact is incredibly important to the APFIT team. Like, what is this gonna do? Is why you don't see these things given to even a qualified small business under SBA standards that's already got $50-100 million in contract, because there's no impact to the company. It's that growth after, and say, hey, look, we had one early user and now you're 23, so less than three, just over 3 calendar years later, you're tracking this whole list of new customers. I think that's the quantifiable metric.
Let me touch on that real quick too. Is today, through 24 and 25 and 26, we are deployed to every geographic command globally. We're supporting JADA 401 on the southern border. We're protecting the nation's capital. This is a cool point, is that in March of this year, there were some news stories about unattributed drones over the NCR. Of all the sensors in the NCR, our technology were the only sensors to track those targets. So, this investment in APFIT enabled us to protect the nation's capital.
Huge. Thank you, because I'm sitting across the street from the Capitol right now, so I very much appreciate that. All right, so that's all good news, right? Crushed it. Congratulations. A model company, truly, like in POM acceleration, in program growth, and user growth, everything. But not everything is, unicorns and rainbows, right? You talked a little earlier that it's always a work in progress going through the program, but back to the APFIT team and the folks running the program right now. Not going back in the way back machine. Look, you were class 2. That was clunky back in the day, right? The programmatics had not really smoothed out yet. But as far as maybe looking into the future, growth, what would you like to see from the APFIT program or the next class or 10 classes in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I want to say thanks to Devin and the team in the APFIT office. They have been great partners beyond just the initial award. And they continue to do great work on educating both the private market, new entrants, as well as the program offices, because one of the things that we saw and continue to see is a lot of folks, even though this is getting a pretty high profile, they don't understand the mechanics of actually how to do it, how to get this in. And to give you a perspective on how competitive it is, in the Army, there were 350 applicants the year we won. They necked that down to 2. And then of the 2 that went up to OSWR&E, we were one that was picked. Where I think as we continue to mature the program, it would be beneficial to the program and to specific companies is right now, when a company is notified of award, the award comes through a program office or some other vehicle, potentially a prime if you're a sub on a contract. One of the things that we've seen as a venture-backed company is, one, when you can get your own contract vehicle, that is a signal to the market that you're real and you're starting to get traction. And then if it has ceiling on that contract, that is even a higher check where, when you look at what Deputy Feinberg and the team are trying to do inside our Department of War, is if we're going to deliver at scale, faster, and more affordable, and there's the emphasis of doing self-investment in IRAD and facilities and whatnot, you need to have the confidence as a company of the private market that you're real and you're going to scale and there's traction. And so whether it be using an OTA or some other type of vehicle to award directly to the winners, that would be super helpful to continue to mature the program, because the program is awesome. So these are just small points of friction that if you can continue to add these additional capabilities, the program is only going to get better for the department.
Because I think everybody jokes about it, right? Like it's, the valley of death, right? It's grotesquely overused term, but like, let's just use it. You get through one valley, it's how do I get out of RDT and into Proc dollars? How do I get to real recurring revenue, right? So you get your APFIT award, Proc dollars, tens of millions, congratulations. And then the next valley is contracting. Like, how do I get this on contract? And like you said, do I have to work with a prime? If I already have that in place, does my user know how to do a SBIR phase 2 to phase 3 transition? And is that the contract field you use? Really, in this case, what I'm hearing, and I'll break it down, I think, as simple as makes sense for me in my New York City public school education, right? If the APFIT office just said, hey, congratulations, APFIT, here's your prototype, your production OTA with a $99 million ceiling on it. We're going to give you 10, 20, 30. call all your friends and your other users and tell them that they can MIPR to this contract and continue to add to that. Even having 99 million on a ceiling for your first product contract really allows you to take that as almost a bond out to the investors and say that we actually have real opportunity and real mechanisms to grow the company beyond this award. So it's not just the original 10, 20, whatever your award was, but it's we can grow in the near term over the next 3 years up to potentially a $99 million production OTA.
Yeah. And that, pulling that string a little bit more, you are on target, because what we hear as we engage additional partners across Department of War, the first question you get from the program office is, what contract vehicles do you have? Where can I MIPR money? Because they may not have ceiling on contract vehicles they have, but they also understand is in this environment where if your technology is really valuable and needs to get to the battlefield quickly, if you're having to face a traditional acquisition path to get to some type of contract, it's going to be long. An OTA, you can award an OTA in 6 days. Once you have it, you can do a task order just as quick, MIPR that money in. As long as you have ceiling on the contract, you can go quickly to market as a program manager, buy the technology from an APFIT company, and move that very quickly into the hands of the warfighter.
Yeah. Yeah. So one, obviously, all the credit in the world to the APFIT team. Devin's literally been there from day one. He has seen every iteration of this, continue to mature it. But these are all really great points as we continue to think through like how to grow this program for the future, make it more resilient, sustainable, right? Over time, we want to see this still here 10 years from now. So the good part of that is you're going to be here in DC tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Hanging out here, one at Frontier House, across the street from the Capitol. We'll be doing the APFIT Awards tomorrow. So this is the first annual, inaugural, if you will, APFIT Awards on Capitol Hill. Will be going up, talking to the members of Congress about what the APFIT program is, showing them all their constituents who've won, like yourself, and Undersecretary Michael will be there, along with the whole R&E team and the congressional leadership from the appropriations committees that fund this thing. As you go forward, what's your parting shot to someone thinking about going after the 27-1 or beyond cycle?
So first off, I want to say, as we're wrapping this up, thank you for having me on. A huge thanks to Rep. Garber and his continued desire to champion APFIT. A thanks to you, because you don't bring this up very much, but you've been involved from day one as well, and have been an absolute champion to continue to have this program funded. And the great thing is, it's the great relationship that's been created between OSWRNE and the committee with Rep. Calvert, that oversight is more of a partnership, and it allows the program to continue to grow and be effective. So my advice to the folks who are beginning to really go at this hard is, one is, make sure that your program office is really aware and tracking. They can always reach out then to Devin and the team to get advice on how to run a process to get your technology vetted for the APFIT program. You have to have real tech that's ready to transition to the TRL-7 and beyond realm, because you're going to have to deliver an end item. So inside your company, this is all about scaling. Is once you get to this point, if you're not laying in the capability systems and process to be ready to deliver, and maybe ISO 9001 certification, and maybe other things that begin to lay in the bona fides, where the U.S. government says this is a real company from a CMMC compliance perspective, from a quality assurance perspective, et cetera, that you're actually ready to transition and deliver real products that can be, the department can have the confidence that they can send it into combat and the system is going to work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Concur. Second, agree with the gentleman, if you will, from the great state of, all of those things. It's about delivery, right? It's about delivery. It's about getting out there. A lot of people want the money A lot of people want to win so they could say that they win so that then they can go out and raise. But the fact of the matter is, this is a defining paradigm shift in your company. You're a real company after this, or you will fail and you will go down in flames if you're not ready to get there yet and you're not ready to deliver. Fortunately, to date, knock on wood, we haven't had any disastrous failures, but you really need to be honest with yourself as a company. Don't be wasting people's time going through the process, or don't set yourself up for failure, not ready to be a real company and deliver for the warfighter. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And that's why Congress continues to support it, because we don't have another mechanism in the government that moves as fast for PROC as APFIT does.
Absolutely. And you and I know this, but it's good to hammer this home to the folks who are listening to this, is when a program is evaluated each year inside the building, the Pentagon, but also across the river and Congress, it's cost, schedule, and performance. You are only as good as those three metrics and how you deliver against them, both as a program office and as a company. And that's why we're proud that we've delivered everything ahead of schedule, on cost, and on quality. We have a good reputation of doing that. If you're going to really get beyond just the reputation of the award and become a company that is trusted across the department, cost, schedule, and performance, you have to deliver on time, you have to deliver on cost, and the system has to work.
100%. Brad, thank you so much for taking some time to do this. Congratulations on winning. Congratulations on continued success. Thanks for everything you're doing for the National Capital Region. I appreciate that. And we'll see you here in DC tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.